Let's talk about the Waleses in Wales. So I had an absolutely wonderful day last Thursday. Travelled up to central Wales. I was a little bit. It's a long way to go.
20-mile-an-hour speed limits.
It's a long way to go, honestly, genuinely. And people who live in Australia and America will probably laugh at me with the geography and stuff like that. But it is a long way to go for the job. But honestly, I was completely overwhelmed. If whelmed is a word, I was extra overwhelmed from what I saw. It was absolutely crazy and unbelievable. The scenes that happened there was we counted like 7 walkabouts. At one stage, the car was driving through one of the towns, and lots of people had come out into the town to see them, but they couldn't get to the event. So William and Catherine, stopped the car, and they ran out and they did a walkabout. I genuinely was touched by what happened. You've obviously seen the footage and seen what's gone on. It was astonishing.
And it was pouring with rain as well, wasn't it? The weather was absolutely awful, and yet the crowd still came out. You know, people keep talking about, is this the downfall of the monarchy with all the Andrew and Epstein stuff going on? Clearly, you saw it firsthand. It's not the downfall of the monarchy, is it? When you have crowds like that.
This is an interesting point, because we talked about in the last couple of weeks about the royal family being in crisis. I actually think it was quite a brave move, Phil, for them to
It's all brave, in a funny sort of way. I mean, we all know that you know, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is incredibly unpopular, as are Harry and Meghan in this country with most people. I know they've got their fans, but with most people. In a strange sort of way, I think it means that people are sort of rallying around the others, and they're becoming more popular by comparison, as opposed to bringing the whole monarchy down. I think people are saying, right, well, you know, they're the bad apple, so to speak, and you know, we're going to rally round and support the king and of course William and Kate. So William and Catherine. I know your viewers like us to call her Catherine. It's just shorthand for us, but it's you know, they are incredibly popular, and nice to see they're very popular in Wales, where you know, bears their name, and I gather she spoke a bit of Welsh.
She did in a St David's Day. Both of them did. Now, but what the thing that I found remarkable about this was the amount of hugs that Catherine was giving, high fives, selfies, etc. And if I go back to the Netflix documentary, Harry and Meghan's Netflix documentary, do you remember Meghan explained that she didn't think that Catherine was a hugger? Has something changed? The amount of hugs that the Princess Catherine...
I think she's changed a little bit since her illness. I think she's become more sort of reflective and more, possibly
tactile,
more spiritual. And she said that herself, hasn't she?
Yeah.
You know, and certainly, you know, going on quite a lot about, you know, being in tune with nature and nature's healing powers and things like that. So I think anyone gets changed by a, you know, if you're sort of staring a serious illness in the face, you become much more sort of, you know, puts things in perspective. So maybe she has changed a little bit. But I mean, you know, but this all stems back to Diana, really, doesn't it? You know, sort of, you know, I don't really follow them around as much as you do, Matt. But obviously, I remember the days of Diana when people would be in tears, you know, meeting her. You know, they were just overwhelmed, you know. And I don't know if people were crying when you turned up the other day.
Well, I remember there was only me for the mileage. But no, there was. I remember there was a 7-year-old girl, and she was just screaming, "Princess, princess, princess," really loudly. And because they had so many people to speak to, then they eventually got to this girl. It was Leilani, I think her name was. And then she was just, you know, she was completely crazy. And I spoke to her afterwards. Why? Why were you, you know, like, so happy? And she goes, because she's a princess. I wanted to meet Princess Catherine. If you indulge me, if I contrast that to Harry and Meghan in Jordan, which we need to talk about, which happened at the same time. There was an incident, I remember, where a little girl was introduced to Meghan and said, do you know Meghan? And the little girl just kind of walked away. And I'm going to float the idea that it is the difference in kind of popularity and the welcome they had in Jordan, the welcome of the Wales, because everyone knows that Catherine is a princess, but they only see Meghan as, you know, a woman off a cookery TV show.
Well, it's slightly unfair to compare a girl in Wales to possibly a Palestinian refugee in Jordan who probably had no idea who they were, to be honest, to be fair. But I mean, I don't think that's a very fair comparison. But having said all that, I am getting the impression with these Harry and Meghan, you know, quasi-royal trips that people are getting a bit bored by them. I mean, I think this is what, the 4th or 5th they've done, haven't they? Where have they been? Nigeria, Colombia, Jamaica, I think, a couple of others possibly. I mean, they're becoming like a sort of royal tribute band, aren't they? They sort of turn up and they, you know, kick a few footballs around like the Waleses do, and you know, very smartly dressed and meet the kids and go on about mental health. It's all sort of fairly sort of similar stuff. But the fact is, it's just not authentic because they're not royals, you know, not working royals anymore. So they're kind of just sort of going through the motions. But I mean, in terms of publicity, certainly in the UK, I don't know what it's like in the US or elsewhere, but I just think people are just getting a bit sort of turned off by it. I mean, if she makes a lot of money with her jam and you know, and her other sort of businesses, then as far as I'm concerned, that's great, you know, get on with it. But sort of pretending that you're still semi-royal, exactly what the Queen didn't want, half in and half out, I just don't think it works, you know. And I'm not saying they did anything wrong out there, but they didn't meet the Jordanian royal family, you know. And if I think in Jamaica they were welcomed by the Prime Minister or whatever. So it varies from country to country. But you know, if they're pleased to see them, great. But
I also want to know, you know, what is the point? So Catherine and William were in Wales, the Prince and Princess of Wales, but it was coming up to St David's Day, and they were doing it because they are members of the royal family, and they're doing it out of service and duty. Why did Harry and Meghan go to Jordan? What was the point? Profile, dare I say it, to up their profile, to make them seem relevant, going back to buy the jam. You know, I don't really know what is the point of doing something like that.
It wasn't made clear,
profile.
was it?
I think they've got a big problem now, you know, certainly since some of their charities have gone pear-shaped, you know, certainly Centre Barley, for example, just imploding. You know, it's difficult to sort of present yourself as a serious you know, charity campaigner or you know, somebody looking at various causes when that's happened, when that's all fallen apart. You know, so all they've really got is, you know, hello, we are Harry, you know, we are the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, you know, and it's wearing a bit thin.
Well, this goes back to my point, you know, like, to repeat myself from earlier, but everyone was excited to see Princess Catherine, but Meghan is now, you know, she's not really Duchess of Sussex, doesn't do anything royal, so she is just someone who appears on a Netflix TV show. That's my argument.
But she does like being known as Duchess of Sussex.
She does always,
you know, always being.
You know, I'm Meghan Sussex now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they were, just for balance, they were invited. Went there to Jordan on the invitation of the Director General of the World Health Organization, and Harry did speak about aid, the demand for aid to be sent to Gaza. It feels.
Well, I read somewhere they'd given $500,000 to the World Health Organization. Is that true? So that's Harry and Meghan had done that. So you know, they're also making some money. Or they're where did that come from? $500,000.
Yeah, well,
if it's true.
If it's true.
Well, they've restructured, haven't they, recently as well? They restructured all their operations, but it just felt a little bit kind of out of date. It didn't, you know. We talk about. I don't really understand the point of it. It just felt a little bit kind of contrasting it to the
needy.
trip to Wales.
I thought it was a bit needy.
Yeah.
You know, we haven't been in the limelight for a little while.
Yes,
you know, let's
a
go and do a visit.
It looks a bit like that.
And it's interesting that they didn't post on Instagram. So you know how they love to post everything on Instagram, but there was nothing about this trip that they posted online. Almost like they were embarrassed about it in many ways. I don't know.
I think it was what it was. I don't think it's, you know, if they wanted to have them there and they invited them and people there were pleased to see them, that's absolutely fine. But it's to me, it's getting a bit tedious.